My goodness, that was pretty extraordinary. And this extraordinary journey is going to continue. And thank you so much. It was absolutely fabulous and inspirational. So going from the polar regions, we are going into talent strategies for corporate ventures. So this is going to be a panel that is going to be moderated by Petra, and there will be Philip, Alex, and Nikolaj talking about it. However, before the panel, Nikolaj is going to do a short presentation. So please give them your warm welcome.
All right, so welcome to all of you today. It's my pleasure to kick off our today's panel on the topic, the right fit, talent strategies for corporate ventures, building teams that drive ventures forward. My name is Nikolaj Penava. I'm currently doing my PhD at the University of Bayreuth at the Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Germany. And here you can see a QR code following to my LinkedIn page. If you want to share some insights on corporate venturing or corporate venture building, I'm happy to connect. Okay, starting things off, I brought two quotes of my research today, and I want to make one point very clear in the beginning when we talk about corporate venture teams. We have to know that creating an independent corporate venture team is never fully controllable. So there will always be factors you can't control as an organization, right? And let's have a look at the first quote. I talked to a venture manager from a venture studio in Germany, and she said to me, "It's about complementarity. We can try to push it, we can try to select, but then how these people get along together, that's really on them." Maybe let's have a look at the second quote here, which underlines this statement. A talent acquisition expert from a corporate venture builder I talked to said to me, "It just happens that we don't have 100% control over it. We can provide support, but we shouldn't be the authority that somehow holds the hand on a permanent basis. The startup should act independently." And those two quotes really could show that if it comes to building sustainable corporate venture teams, we never can control everything. Okay, but what is the overall aim of a corporate venture building process or of a corporate venturing project? We want to shift from an internal venture project on the left-hand side to a real corporate venture team on the right-hand side, right? So what is in between is a transition process. And when we look on the left-hand side, when we start a corporate venture project internally in an organization, we are mostly dependent on corporate resources, on the resources of the organization. We most of the time have employees as the first team members from our organization or from the corporate venturing unit. We have no to low risk because we're operating in the corporate space, so there is no to low risk in the beginning. We have no real opportunity ownership, and there is relatively low commitment and passion because we have employees staffed on the project and no real co-founders in the beginning. So what we have here is a kind of corporate mindset. And we want to shift to the right side to a corporate venture having a venture mindset. What does it mean? We want to create a team which is mostly independent and which has a real co-founding team, which pursues high-risk strategies, which develops full opportunity ownership for the new venture, and which has high commitment and passion. And alongside this process, as I just said, there is a transition process. And one of the key challenges here is finding and hiring the right talent. So what is the right team setup? What profiles do we need? How do we manage all those handover points, and what is the right timing to hire those roles required for driving this venture forward? And in my research, I was able to identify two main different strategies when it comes to the venture team question. And having a look on the left-hand side, we can see the entrepreneur in residence model. Some of you might know this strategy, you might have heard of this, and the entrepreneur in residence model follows a founder-first logic. What does it mean? Before or at the start of a corporate venturing project, you go on the market and hire an external entrepreneur in residence, an individual from the market, which does not come from inside the organization. Most of the times you hire an external talent, and this external entrepreneur in residence is recruited to help set up the project right from the beginning. He is involved right from the start of the project. And this means that the venture idea is centralized around this person, right? Around this entrepreneur in residence. And the entrepreneur in residence has to grow into different roles following the venture development process. Having a look on the right-hand side, we can see the second different strategy I was able to identify, and I coined it the stuffing according to venture stage model. And this one follows a venture-first logic, so compared to the left-hand side, where we can see a founder-first logic, we here can see a venture-first logic. What does it mean again? We see that the initial corporate venture project is set up internally in your organizational structures, and it is validated by mostly employees of the corporate venturing unit, employees from your organization, and you don't have external talent at this point, and you do this most of the time until product market fit or similar stages. Once this product market fit has been achieved, you go outside on the market because you now know specific co-founder roles, right? You know, I'm gonna need a CTO, a CFO, and a CEO, and you can go out on the market and hire for exactly those profiles. And you can hire senior profiles here, so those dedicated founder roles are hired externally and take over this venture project. As we can see, both strategies are quite different, but at the same time, there is one thing that is very important for both strategies. We have to hire profiles who first understand how corporate structures work, because we want to have people who knows how to leverage assets from the corporate environment, who can leverage resources from the corporate, who can demonstrate good stakeholder management in those big corporate structures, but at the same time, we need some entrepreneurial mindsets. We need people who are proactive, who are innovative, thinking differently, and drive the venture project forward. And now let's maybe zoom into both strategies to understand what potentials and pitfalls every strategy comes along with. First, let's start with the entrepreneur in residence model again. As you can see on the left-hand side, the potentials are the following. First, those co-founders you are hiring, the entrepreneur in residence, is involved right from the beginning. This person is involved right from the start. So you have no to maybe little friction losses during this very first handover moment. And the people are involved right from the beginning. So, which also means, and the second point here demonstrates this quite well, we can observe a growing passion and growing commitment. And thus, we can see that this promotes the emergence and the development of opportunity ownership. So the co-founder, the entrepreneur in residence, develops opportunity ownership because he's involved right from the beginning, and he pursues his journey alongside the very venture building process. And last but not least, there is plenty of time and space for this new co-founder and for the new co-founding team to understand all relevant stakeholders in the organization, in this nexus, so there can be built trust, which is very essential if you want to build a sustainable venture team in the end. Looking on the right-hand side, we can also see some pitfalls the strategy comes with. And the first point is very important here, because you're hiring a person with a certain skill set, right? You're looking for an entrepreneur in residence, and this person comes along with certain skills, certain character traits. And the problem here could be that those skills are relevant in the beginning when it comes to validating your problem solution fit, doing some ideation. But these skills will become less important in later stages when it comes to clear founding roles. So you need for example, a CTO, and this person has to follow these various role transitions during the venture building process, and this could lead to difficulty in learning all the relevant skills and developing these character traits and managing those role transitions efficiently. And the last point, the recruited entrepreneur in residence will always try to steer the venture project into his direction. So it could be difficult for you as a corporate or as an organization to manage and control the project, and there could be a growing probability of a mismatch between the corporate goals or your corporate strategy and the goals of the individual entrepreneur in residence. Looking at the second strategy I was able to identify in my research, we can again see that there is two sides of a coin as with everything, and let's start with the potentials. As I just said, in this strategy, you hire right on the spot. So you can look for experienced and senior profiles who can take over the venture project at the very right time, when you know what roles are required, when you know what profiles to look for. So tasks and responsibilities do no longer change so often after product market fit, and you can hire right on the spot. Second point is also of a great importance, because especially in those early stages of a venture building process, you have repetitive tasks, you have repetitive processes. So it is very easy for you to stuff different people on the project who need a more generalistic entrepreneurial mindset. So you have a certain degree of flexibility who to stuff on those projects in the very beginning. And last but not least, on the left-hand side, you have relatively strong control from a corporate perspective over the development and direction of the new venture, because you're involved right from the beginning. Your people are working on the project, and you can reduce the likelihood of an interest mismatch later on. Looking at the pitfalls this strategy comes with, we can see that in the beginning you have some project groups consisting of employees from your corporate, from your organization, right? So those are employees who are often incentivized via a fixed salary. You pay them a fixed salary, which means they don't really have this venture mindset, because they will receive their salary no matter what, and they are less incentivized to go all in and take all the risks as a normal entrepreneur operating freely on the market would do. Second point, as there is many handover points and many role transitions and team setups during the entire development process, we can see friction and loss of knowledge during those multiple handover moments, and those could have a negative impact on the development of the whole venture team. And last point, we can see difficulties in developing a close opportunity ownership between the venture team and the venture project, because those roles are hired later on and taking over the idea as adopting a baby which you were not involved right from the beginning. So it's not your baby, you're adopting a child, kind of, and that could lead to difficulties as well. Okay, so before we dive deep into the panel discussion right now, I want you to take away 4 things today. First, as I showed in the very beginning, you as an organization building real venture teams cannot control and never control everything. So you should focus on what you really can control, meaning that you have to provide an entrepreneurial environment, you have to have clear processes, have to be transparent about expectations, and you have to be able to align the entrepreneur in residence or the entrepreneurs which are working with you with your corporate strategy. Second, we can see that there are various phases of a venture development, and all of those do require a different team setup, or at least different roles following this team setups, so keep that in mind. Third, managing those handover points you have following the venture building process is very crucial for success. And last but not least, and this is by far the most important key takeaway, there could be many different strategies that can be successful. I showed 2 of them today. There might be many, many more, but there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So you always have to consider different factors. Every venturing project is unique, every organization is unique, so keep that in mind. Okay, so what do you think about it? I'm happy to discuss with the other panelists right now. Thanks for your attention.
Hello? Okay, works, good. Good, so welcome everybody, and welcome to our dear panelists. So we have 3 very different profiles talking about the same topic, which is how to find the right fit in a venture building setting. So thank you so much, Nikolaj, for this wonderful presentation. It was very informational. So I would like to actually continue on something that you mentioned in your presentation, and that is this move from internal project groups toward more independent, sustainable venture teams. So some organizations keep ventures in-house, as you said, and others spin them out. And of course, each of these paths has its own implications for the culture of the company, identity of the company, and team dynamics. So my question to all of you is, what are some of the pros and cons of building ventures internally within the team versus spinning them out as standalone entities? Alex, do you want to maybe start with your experience in Raiffeisen?
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me here today. So I think when you look at, I definitely agree with the one-size-fits-it-all approach doesn't work, and every single company has its own specificities. It's like an own DNA. They call it an own organism, and you have to very well understand how it works in order to be able to create and maybe even test solutions that work well for you. With regards to us, we are a banking group. We're a very highly regulated environment, and we have done several experiments with how to truly get corporate innovation successful, both in not investing money into things that do not work, but as well as also scaling projects that do work. And we have we're using both models for different circumstances. So externally and from start to end at times, we do lots of things that are maybe not that close to our core, or are maybe also due to regulatory requirements difficult to do for us. So certain things like blockchain or certain things like crypto assets is maybe not something that also as a bank we want to do or we can do, so then it makes sense to also be able to invest or participate in the market on the side. With regards to all the internal things that we do have an internal venture builder team, and we run also lots of entrepreneurship programs where we are trying to really combine the best of the 2 worlds, the entrepreneurial mindset, sometimes also pairing them with people from outside of the market, as well as with the internal expertise, knowledge, network, and trying to get the best of 2 worlds. So I think different use cases, different situations have different models, and larger companies try to create a combination of both. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much for your insight. And I would also love to hear from Philippe. He's working in whataventure. He's actually a founder and a partner. So would love to also hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, I would say there is no clear advantage or disadvantage because it, as mentioned before, it's a case-by-case decision. It depends on how strongly do you interact with internal synergies and assets. The stronger you interact, the more important it becomes that you have people that are well connected internally. The further away you are from the core business, the fewer assets you actually can use, the less important the internal connections become. I believe it always is a benefit if you add external people with entrepreneurial mindset to a team. I would even say often in a leading role. Why? Because the question is, what kind of culture do you want in that venture? Do you want to have the same compatible culture as in the corporate, or do you want or do you need a different culture? And you can't, or it's never say never, because there are successful cases with every setup, with every team constellation, but the question is, do you want a new culture that is maybe more venture-driven, more entrepreneurial? It's hard to achieve that if you put 5 people from the corporate together, because they already live the corporate culture. They might be very motivated, but still they are living in that same culture.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And after we will talk about team dynamics, and then maybe we can also come to that point, how is mixing different people from different industries and worlds. And Nikolaj, do you have anything to add on this question?
I have nothing to add here. I think those are the critical points. Always depending on your strategy as an organization. Do you want to, option A, do you want to create an independent venture team later to operate freely on the market, or do you want to build a corporate venture which is integrated back into your organization? So this is a difference, and at the same time totally agree on what both of you just were saying, so nothing more to add.
Okay, great. So some of you already started a bit talking about like recruiting externally. Philippe said that he thinks it's always good to get somebody external, but here is my question. So in our prep talk, there was a challenge that often comes up in venture teams, which is that there is not a lack of talent per se, but there is a skills mismatch. So building new ventures obviously requires certain entrepreneurial capabilities, and that we don't see that in traditional corporate setting they're really being developed. So my question is, how do you identify people with entrepreneurial potential inside of your own team or company? And how do you decide whether to develop that internally, that potential, or bring it actually externally, so founders, experts, and so on? Philippe, do you maybe want to, since you already started talking a bit about it, that you always think it's a good idea to bring somebody external, right?
Well, maybe start with something critical that we can discuss. I would definitely say there is lack of talent for the roles that you need there.
Lack of talent, right?
Lack of talent. So you need to identify the right people who are willing and capable of driving through extreme uncertainty in a very hazard environment, because the corporate organization is built to run ongoing business, and now you want to start something new where you don't know where you are going to. You will constantly face hurdles and challenges. So either you accept them and you need two years longer, or you don't accept them, and then you have constant friction that you are creating with the organization. You need to accept that, you need to cope with it, you need to navigate it. There are also on the external market, you will face the uncertainties and the challenges. And if we look at success ratios, like for example, Y Combinator has a success ratio of 7% of teams that get into Y Combinator, and this being the most powerful accelerator worldwide, means there are many people who don't succeed, and many of them fail because of the team, the people. And I think we need to take that into consideration, that only a few people will actually manage to achieve something that is that difficult. Obviously, you have less difficult projects and more difficult projects. But if we really talk about ventures with high uncertainty, I think there's only a small amount of people who will achieve this.
Very interesting. And it's a bit different than I think what Alex told me, because her opinion is that there is actually plenty of talent, but there is lack of skills. So a bit different approach from Philippe, which I always love in a panel discussion. So can you tell me your view on this?
I think it's probably hard to say one or the other. What I was saying, like looking at, and we've been running entrepreneurship programs, for example, for already 6 years. So lots of experience. And one thing that we never had a lack of was engaged people with the mindset of wanting to go out of their comfort zone, with the mindset of having lots of different ideas. And also as a bank, and maybe that might be a bit surprising for most people who know Raiffeisen, because we're Raiffeisen Bank International. We have a bit of a different, let's say, corporate culture. We're very entrepreneurial, very looking out for opportunities, doing things very opportunistically at times. So I think we also have a specific entrepreneurial corporate culture. And that hasn't ever been a problem for us. Maybe we're also in a privileged situation. I am just now talking about the personal experience. What, however, is the challenge when we're working with internal employees is the skills which I believe every entrepreneur has to learn by doing. So the skills of validation, of being very customer oriented, of going out early, trying with the customer, of maybe doing interviews with the customer before building the product, of prototyping. These are the skills that our employees do not have. Having said that, the truth is that it's not that everyone is entrepreneurial and that everyone is looking to be part of innovative new projects. And God bless, that's not the case in corporate environments. So I think if there was something like 2 profiles that you would need in a company, you would need both. You would need the ones that can run today's business, that do a great job in managing standardized processes, that enjoy doing that as well and are good at that, and you have to foster that. And then you have also the ones which are find an environment where you can do a little bit more daring things, where every day looks completely different, where you're firefighting, where you are continuously and constantly adapting, and what changes the constant. And I think the future of corporate companies is to have a combination of both, and a system that can make both of those happen, right?
Yeah. That's also important to have the system. Yes, go for it.
Maybe specifying something, because I think the difficult discussion is the success ratio that we are looking at. Because as mentioned, there are success cases for every team dynamics and setup. But the question is, how can we be more successful than the 7% of the already best accelerator in the world? And then this is obviously all projects that have unicorn potential, and in corporates we sometimes also have projects maybe that are with fewer uncertainty, lesser uncertainty, therefore already there we could have a higher success ratio. But within a corporation, only having 7% success chance, no venture building unit or innovation unit would succeed 5 years duration. We need to achieve 20, 25, 30, 33% of success ratio within a corporate. And therefore I think we need to choose the best people. And what are the best people? That bring the motivation that you say, have the right mindset and the experience. And if we build teams with people that bring the motivation and have the mindset, but not the experience, we are losing one part of success criteria that will lower the success rate. And that's why we say there is few talent, because we believe in corporate venture building to achieve a higher success rate, we need the people that match all those 3 criteria.
Maybe to just add one point here, as I'm totally agreeing with both of you, as I was showing on my slides, and that's what you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you need those corporate entrepreneurs, people who at the one hand side, know corporate structures, can leverage resources, can navigate through all those stakeholders and find his or her way. And on the other end, you need people having this entrepreneurial mindset, this willingness to take risks, proactiveness, innovativeness, finding his personal way. So, but I want to highlight one thing. I would say one of the most, when we talk about talent and skills, one of the most needed skills is stakeholder management, because you have so many stakeholders in this construct, decision makers you most probably or maybe will never see because they're not attending the meetings. You have managers, innovation architects, venture architects, co-founders, and it is very important to align all those visions and be a good stakeholder manager, and I think that's one of the most critical skills needed.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And while talking about the needed skills and that are needed from somebody who works in who you hire, let's say for a venture, corporate venture, if you hire externally, what are you looking for beyond skills? So we have soft skills, we have technical skills, that's all fine. But what are some of the personal traits that you're looking for in a person when you decide to hire?
Multi-lude. First, three things that come into my mind. Number one, somebody who has a lot of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the life of a person doing a startup and the life of a person doing entrepreneurship or corporate innovation is to some extent quite similar in terms of the resistance that you have to face nearly on a daily basis. So a certain magnitude of perseverance is unbelievably important. We're looking at also cultural fit, and this is maybe an interesting component. We're not looking for somebody who is exactly like our culture, but not somebody who's also too far away, because otherwise they will be rejected from the system. So this is a bit of a, how shall I say? This is a bit of a, it has to be close enough and yet not far enough. It's a bit of an art to find the right cultural fit with regards to that. And two more components that come to mind, completely customer oriented. So we always look at, okay, who's the first person you talk to when you have an idea? And if it's not the customer, for us, this is already a red flag. And last but not least, team. Like team capabilities, like are you working in teams? How do you work in teams? Because innovation is teamwork, right? So these are maybe the first, let's say, 3-4 things that come into my mind.
Great, thank you so much. Nikolaj?
As always, totally agree. But at the same time, when it comes to building teams and highlighting this from an academia perspective, we want to achieve two things. We want to have complementary teams and supplementary teams. So we need people who complement each other concerning skills. So if we already have a CTO type of employee in the corporate, we need somebody who has the CEO skills, CPO skills, stuff like that. And at the same time, and this is very important, we need people who have the same vision, look into the right direction, share the same values, and in the best case, this also aligns with your corporate strategy, with your corporate values and your corporate culture. So I would say, to make a more general point here, it's a mix of supplementary and complementary fit.
Maybe before adding to that, for context, since we do 80% of what we do is building new business for corporates, and 20% of what we do is building our own portfolio. So we have around half a dozen of ventures that we invest in and that we build up with our own profits that we invest into. And now I agree to all that you said on what you're looking for on personal traits. What I would add is I would always want someone to run our portfolio venture that already has the experience of building up a venture with at least, I'd say, 20, 30 people. Why this amount? Because it doesn't require a successful venture or a failed venture, but it requires the size. If it's just a startup idea with 1 or 2 or 3 people, then you didn't learn how to recruit the best people, how to build the culture, how to decide to let someone go if this person doesn't fit into the team, and so on. But if you came to this size, you learned all this. You learned how to run a company, how to manage a company, how to manage a team. And this is, I believe, one of the most common points where a company fails once it is past the validation phase, which we talk and focus a lot in venture building, but actually there's so many more pitfalls to come after successful validation to just do it bad, to execute it in a bad way, and then you will not grow, and then you will not become successful either.
Great, thank you so much. And I would like to talk now about another challenge that arises after hiring, and that is retention of your employees. So we know that after you hire successfully and they go through this amazing process of building a venture, they obviously change. They change their mindset, they change the way they work, and they develop really new ways of thinking, right? And sometimes they can't or they don't want to return to their previous roles, right? So how can organizations support internal talent through this transformation? And how do you avoid this identity crisis, let's say, where they no longer feel at home in either the venture or the parent company? Yes, maybe Aleks, you can talk from experience.
We have made some painful experience with regards to that. So we've been running entrepreneurship programs where we had like a particularly kind of stage gate approach where you would start off and it would be just a few days, and then it would be a few weeks, and then it would be a few months up to a year. And just like the funnel of ideas, we also had in the beginning quite large audience of 100 and something people across the group, and then in the end it would be 2 to 3 teams, each staffed at 2 to 3 with 2 to 3 let's say founder profiles. And especially for the ones that remained for a very long period of time, when they came back to their original role, for them it was really difficult to reintegrate back. And that led to many of them then looking for different opportunities, not necessarily outside of the bank. Some of them went on and created in the countries their own innovation departments because they got so inspired by what they did. So, but not really many were able to bring the skills that they have learned back into their original job, because in the end of the day also the scope of the work that is being done is so very different. So that's why we decided to actually consciously split our entrepreneurship programs into 2 types of programs. One which is much more about exploratory innovation, which is truly outside of the innovation, and here we're having a separate venture builder team with the entrepreneurial experience and the capability to connect with the organization. And when we run more like new business model or cryptocurrencies, new technologies, things that are a bit outside of our core, and we have entrepreneurs, they have a potential future home base where they can go to, right? And for programs where we are more on the less transformative, so exploit side, where it's about improving the current business model, improving our current products, processes, efficiency, innovation. AI, for example, now is also, of course, quite a big topic. For that, we do run entrepreneurship programs, which are much more bound less in time, and where the people are not going out, but they're we call them Fridays for Innovation, just to give you a little bit. So there are just a few, there are programs where you're not fully out of your line. You're learning these skills, these capabilities. How does validation work? How does stakeholder management for projects work? Maybe also access to our internal capital, so to our board members or the senior staff. This is what we then facilitate, but they're not out of the line, and they have a better chance to reintegrate back and bring in the skills in the team so that they become multipliers in the organization. But it took us some time and some trial and errors and learnings to get to that particular setup.
But I see you created a little system there, right?
Yes, everything is in systems.
Philippe, what do you see from basically building corporate ventures for corporations? What is your insight on this?
So I see the challenge point where at some point often people have to decide, am I in or am I out? And some ventures have died there because there was this fear of going forward with whatever it is, all in, or it's not always a financial decision, but sometimes it's, hey, I have my place there, I have a career trajectory there, and this is now uncertain. And although I still might keep the contract, the uncertainty is something that will stop some people there. And then it's often painful because it's already further into the journey. So it's hard to replace the people at this time. Often it then means somehow a stop to the project. I think from the other perspective, taking someone in again into the organization, like you pointed out, is always beneficial for the organization. Obviously, it's a very valuable experience that comes back into the organization. If we look at our portfolio, we sometimes lose people from whataventure to our ventures because if they start something, they like it, they have a good fit, they stay there. So happened with my co-founder who was running whataventure with me, now running Woodspace, which is our rising star in the portfolio. And besides still having many touch points with him on a group level, I don't think whataventure will get him back so soon. We had experienced people within whataventure, they filled in the new CEO role. So you have this organic growth and change that also keeps organizations vital.
That's a great insight. Thank you for that. And very interesting one. Nikolaj, do you want to add something to this?
Just one very short point. I think all of this is right, but one critical point is transparency. So I would say it's important to make clear from the very beginning when somebody joins a venture project from the organization which pathways do exist and which scenarios can occur. So even if transparency will not solve upcoming frictions and problems, it is a good starting point. So make very clear what options are there, what scenarios can happen, so the individual can be prepared and can decide on his or her own what to do next. So I would just highlight transparency in this.
If I can add one more thing, and I think it's connecting what you both said. So on one hand, is we made very transparent about what are the options of certain ventures or in entrepreneurship, how they might turn out. We said one combination is that they're reintegrated into a fitting business line. Another combination is maybe they grow so big to become an own division or own department. And then of course at times it might make sense to spin it out completely, and that is it. And then we said at the same time you have to understand the likelihoods of this happening, right? If a startup fails, like a startup's chances of failure are quite high, we are not guaranteeing you that it's going to be easier. You are facing the same type of risks. And as a matter of fact, I think to some extent this is also a, filter is the wrong word, it doesn't sound nice, but it's a way of to see, are you having this true entrepreneurial talent of really going that uncertain extra mile, and do you have what it takes to do that? So if you use that of course, in very empathetic and respectful and careful ways, you have to provide the transparency, but you also have to provide the figures, but you also have to see it as this is how it is, right? So.
Adding to this, since we also ran entrepreneurship programs for 10 years now, we learned that there is this problematic point in time where often the people believe, if I had the idea, I drove the validation, obviously I will be the CEO of this venture. And then at some point it might turn out that this is neither a good idea nor do decision makers see it that way. If that wasn't discussed transparently at the very early point, then this can develop into a dramatic situation that is horrible for all sides. So.
What I always love to say, and it's one of the very first things that I used to say to my teams when I still used to be a coach, is I would say, you know what, first of all, your idea doesn't belong to you. Ideas belong to everyone. And secondly, ideas are there to flirt with, not to marry. So an idea is just an impulse. It's the actual work with the validation when the idea continues to be developed that actually makes an idea great. And then it's not an individual contribution, but it's the contribution of the team. And therefore, we try to manage that expectation quite largely. Just because you applied with an idea or it was your original idea, it doesn't mean, and it's not also the truth, right? So that it's also that you have some type of ownership over it, yeah.
Something to add?
No, nothing to add anymore.
Great discussion. I just want to ask one more question before the last question, and that when we are already now talking about the team and the team dynamics, I wanted to also bring up one topic that could be a challenge. So basically, in a team, one part of the team or one person or two people from the team go out on this exciting new venture, and they have the time of their life, something different, but the other team stays at core base. They're doing the same old job, and that of course can create different tensions and frictions. And my question is, what are these tensions? If you can comment, like, what did you see in your experience, and how can companies really better manage these dynamics that occur?
You go ahead. Yes, so that's it's very often and very common. What are the stories that I hear, and there are certain patterns reoccurring, is especially for certain business teams which lend a colleague for a longer period of time. They feel like, oh yeah, you kind of went on, they call it vacation, or you were playing with Lego and Post-its, and we were doing here the really hard work whilst you were having your fun time, right? And at the same time, you have these people coming and saying, oh, I learned this new thing, and we should be all working completely differently, and it's really, really hard, but it's so worth it, and like, why can't you understand it, right? So there's like a natural tension. I think it's the tension of exploit and explore, and I really love Alex Osterwalder, so I'm gonna cite him now. And he says, we need to find a way how we can turn a culture from, hey, why are you having fun, and hey, why are you running the business, to thank you, dear explorers, for existing, and thank you, dear exploiters, for existing, because dear exploit, you are paying our salary, and dear explorer, you're paying our pension. And how to manage that you can only do for cultural interventions and lots of awareness building, and on both sides, both an explore and exploit. And I think
probably also transparency, right, in a way?
Through transparency, through communication, through walking in each other's shoes, we, for example, work very closely with our colleagues from legal, regulatory affairs, etc. We educate them on how the innovation process works, and that has led us to go really miles and miles, where we are able to even run experiments inside of our company, because they understand, aha, this is a prototype, it's only limited to a few people, so we can maybe do this differently. And they enjoy also participating, because it's also a little bit more creative work for them, and something outside of the regular job that they do.
Thank you, great insight. Philippe?
I'm not sure if it's an answer to your question, but it's a comment to what you said with the phase of Post-its. And so looking back at what you said before, it's this kind of flirting with an idea. I think this validation phase is something that is nice, motivating, new, exploratory. Then at some time there comes the marriage with the idea, and there's the no way back point reached, where you need to achieve success or it's broken. In validation you can say, we learned it doesn't play out. We recommend not doing it. You have done a great job, everything claps your shoulder. After that, you become, call it CEO, project lead, whatever. You get several million euros to invest. You need to ramp up, you need to scale, and then it's survive or die. If we look at the story from before of the North Pole, you need to make it happen at whatever cost it takes. And if I look back when we started whataventure, I was 3 or 4 years, more than 100 nights a year, sleeping in hotels. That's how you did business development those days. And now, if I look at Stefan, who is running Woodspace, he is on a construction site, sitting in a dusty 2 square meter office with noise, no heating in winter, and tries to manage those multi-million projects that Woodspace is building. And I feel sorry for him. I know how much time he's away from family. The projects are either in North Germany or in South Italy. He's driving days and days. But that's what is required to make this happen. There's so much pain you need to go through. And then either it pays out or it does not. But I think there's an important differentiation of this early phase and then the later phase, which takes much longer, always some years.
Thank you. Nikolaj, anything to add on this? No. Okay. So as a last quick question, because we are out of time, I would like to ask you to give one piece of advice for a future, let's say, corporate leader that wants to next month launch a venture. In terms of keeping and finding people, what would be your one advice to him or her?
Maybe I start. As I think there is many advices and many valuable points. I want to highlight again, focus on what you can control as an organization and realize that we're working in an environment with uncertainty, so you cannot control everything, but if you focus on what you can control, meaning processes, creating this entrepreneurial environment, open doors, leveraging networks and corporate assets, I think that's the best way how you can be attractive for external and internal talent to become co-founders. So just focus on what you can control.
Great piece of advice.
So I would say maybe if you're a corporate leader and you want to create a system and you are not sure what talents, what system, what structure you would go for, I would say just give it a go and do trial and error. Mm-hmm. Because I think you can hire the biggest strategists of this world, the McKinseys, the BCGs, the everything. They will all come up with similar suggestions. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that nobody knows what's the best thing for you. You have to iteratively develop that as you move on. And the second piece of advice to that is you have to be very well in managing the senior management and their expectations whilst doing so, of saying, I'm trying out this right now. This is what I'm going to measure. This is what my expectations are. And best case scenario, it works out as I wanted. Worst case scenario, I learn a lot and I will share it with you. And that usually, in most of the time, works quite well. Because oftentimes, and this is what I'm pitching a lot, is if you do entrepreneurship programs, it's really great because it's like a magnifying glass of all the things, of processes, procedures, bureaucracies that are currently going on in your company that do not work. So at least you can also find out something about your company that can make you more faster in developing, or that can dismantle things that you might not need, that are not as useful and are actually slowing you down. And that usually works quite well as an argumentation.
Great, thank you.
If you are a corporate, don't do the mistake of trying to build a corporate venture like a startup. So a corporate does not have scarce resources. So it shouldn't be a decision on saving 500,000 in the first 2 years of validating and building something with maybe not the right team on place then. But the business opportunity needs to be big enough that the 500,000 euros don't make a difference if it's successful. So the most important factor is success rate and speed. And that can cost a little of money to have the perfect setup, to be more often successful, faster successful, and if you have the best team on it, you also get faster to an invalidation, or you realize faster, hey, this won't work, we have a good team on it, it does not work, we stop it. This also again saves money in the long term.
Great insights, thank you so much, and thank you for this wonderful panel discussion, and that's it.